Dear students, welcome to Lab 5. This is the second part of PLSQL. In the first part of PLSQL, we have learned the basic building blocks of an SQL procedure. We have seen how to execute it. We have run and we have created some SQL scripts. In this lab, we are going to discuss the extension of the lab 4. Uh, we are going to discuss how to write the if statement, if else statement, loop with exit, simple loop with exit one, while loop, and the for while loop. So these are the things that we are going to discuss in lab 5. The PLSQL provides us the ability to make a decision in the program. For example, if we come across a situation wherein we have to check a condition and do some work, and if the condition is false, we don't want to do, or we just want to skip what is written inside this block. In that case, the PLSQL provides us with a simple decision making construct called as if then. If then will allow you to do or take an action when the if condition is true. For example, here we have if condition, for example, we have if number 1 is greater than number 2. This is like the condition. Then we execute the following statements. After finishing the statements that we want to do when a condition is true, we end the if by using a keyword and if. So you see, this is the syntax of writing the condition. If condition, then statement. All the statement that we want to execute goes inside the if. After finishing the statements, we end the if by using end if. Here is an example. We are declaring two variables. We declared two variables before this if statement and we are using it inside if. We are checking if the number 1 is greater than number 2, then we are trying to swap their values. We are using a variable called as temp, moving the value of number 1 inside temp, and then moving the value of number 2 inside number 1. And then when the number 2 becomes empty, we want to put the value of temp inside number 2. So if we give the input as 5, okay, it has to be 10 because the number 1 should be greater than number 2, then only this will happen. So if number 1 is 10, number 2 is 5, 10 is greater than 5, then we take a empty variable, it doesn't have any value inside it. So we say temp, use this temp value to move the value of 10 inside it. And when number 1 becomes empty, we put the value of number 2 inside it. So it is having 2, 5 inside number 1. Okay. And number 2 is now empty. So we are moving the value of temp inside number 2. So this is how we are trying to do some work of swapping of number values in the variable when the variable 1 is greater than number of variable 2. Okay. So the output is going to be 5 and number 2 will be 10. Okay, so this is we are doing with the if statement. Okay, now let us execute some simple if conditions which is not having the else part. So I will exit from here and then I will enter. So you will go to SQL plus and give the values of sys as sysdba and password that you have used while installation. I have used 12345, so I type 12345. And here you have to remember that you have to set the server output on. So we'll say set server output on. Okay, set server output on, and then we want to execute some SQL scripts which are having an if statement inside them. So there is a simple program that I have written already. Yeah, the one that we just checked. So This is called as a lab 5. So I have to execute. I have to say at the rate C colon slash SQL scripts SQL scripts slash lab 5 underscore activity1 dot SQL. Just make sure that you have written the program correctly. Yeah. What are we doing here? We are declaring number one, number two, and putting some initial value inside it. And then we are having a third variable temp, which is empty as of now. Then we are saying begin. If number one is greater than number two, yeah, in this case, number one is 5, number two is 3, 5 is greater than 3. Then we get inside the if statement. We are doing this process of swapping the numbers, putting the value of number one inside temp and number two inside number one, and then temp inside number two. So this is how we are swapping the values of number one and number two using a temporary variable. After we finish the if statement, okay, after we finish the if statement, we are trying to print the value of number one with what we have in number one and print the value of number two. So let's see. You see, number one is equal to 3, number 5 is equal to 2, and we SQL, yeah, we have the value number one as 5, you see here, but now the number one is 3. Number two is 3 here, but now here because we changed the values, number two is 5. So this is how the simple if statement executes. The syntax, you have to remember the syntax. The syntax is the if and the condition. Then we write the keyword then and write all the statements that we want to execute if this condition is true. After finishing writing the statements or the job of if condition, we close the if block by using the keyword and if. So this is very, very important. This block, if and if, and in between this if and if, all these statements goes in the middle of these two things. And then we have a then statement. If condition, then do all the work and end if after finishing all the statements that you are writing in the if condition. Let us see one more example called as activity 2. Here we are trying to check if the student is scoring a value of greater than or equal to 60, then we are saying you are passed. If this user gives the score value, you see this is a substitution variable, which means that we are taking the value of this variable from the user. If the user enters a value which is not greater than 60 and not equal to 60, then we don't have anything to do. So we just execute this PLSQL statement because we do not have else part for this. So we are executing only one job of statements if the if condition is true. So let's see. So here entering the value of 6. Okay, let's make it 65. You see, if score, okay, we give the score as 65. So how the program executes, it goes to the declare block, and then it creates a variable called as score, and whatever the user is going to enter inside the value, enter the value of score, that will be stored inside this variable. If the score is greater than, yeah, in this case we entered 65, so 65 is greater than 60, then you come inside the if condition, if block, and then you say dbms underscore output dot put line you passed. After finishing this, then you want to end the if, so we know how to end it. We use reserve word called as end if. So it is like the opening bracket of if condition, and this is the closing bracket of the if condition. Okay, however, we don't use the braces or the brackets here. We just say if, write the condition. If the condition is true, then whatever you want to write, you will write all those statements and then you will say end if. Okay, let us see one more example. Yeah, this example is having uh, if else. So if this condition is true, you will execute the job written inside the if block. If this condition is false, we still want to do some another work. So we write it inside the else block. So we say dbms underscore output dot put line, it's odd. So after finishing what we want to do inside the else block, the if is closed in the same way like how the if block without else is being closed earlier. So if and if, the else body also goes between this if and if. Okay, so the syntax is if, then, and if is what you are used to do. But now this program is having one additional thing, which is else, which else tells that if the condition is not satisfied, do me another work. Okay, so that is written inside else and it goes in the middle of if and if only. It is not written outside. Okay, so here what are we doing? We are saying we are declaring a variable called as num and then taking the value of num from the user, and then we are writing the executable block which is called as begin. If mod num, for example, user enters num as 2, so 2 comma 2 mod is a built-in function which takes the first parameter and then divides it by 2 and takes the remainder. So remainder is always called as mod. So if the mod value is equal to true, what does it mean? If you divide a number, okay, by 2, and if it is giving you 0, for example, number is 6, 6 divided by 2, okay, so two ones, two threes, and the remainder is 0. So whenever there is a 0 as a remainder value, also called as a mod value, then it means the user entered a even value, even number value. So we are saying dbms underscore output dot put line, it is even. Okay. Now in a case where the user is entering the num value as an odd value, for example 7, 7 comma 2 will always give you a mod value which is non-zero. So if it is non-zero, in this case it is 1, which is not equal to 0. It means the user entered an odd value. Let us see how it executes. So what is this file name is called as? Okay, activity 3. I saved it as activity 3. So I'm going to see. Okay. So 5, for example. Now you see it is odd. Okay. If I, okay, clear screen. Okay. And then here I say execute this number of value as I'm giving it as 10. So 10 divided by 2 will give me the remainder as 0 value. Remainder is called as mod. So mod value is 0. So if it is 0, what it will do? If it is 0, it will say it is even. Okay. So it will not go to else part, but it will stay inside the if block only. So let's execute. You see, it is even. Okay. So this is how the if condition and the if else condition works. Simple. You are used to the concepts of decision making in the programming construct. Okay. Decision making as a programming construct is a very important, important building block of any programming language. Only thing what you have to do is you have to remember the syntax. The syntax is very simple. If and if, that's it. And then you write then and else inside this if and if only. Okay, so let's go here. So we saw some examples, couple of examples. Yeah, if condition, this is what I was trying to tell you. If you write the condition, then you write the executables to execute. If this condition is true, statement will be, well, one will execute. If this condition is false, then else part is executed, statement 2 is executed, and then after finishing the starting and the opening of if and if else is same. The only difference is this else coming in the middle. If you are using if else statement, it will give you the advantage of executing one statement, or one set of job if the condition is true. But if the condition is false, you always have an ability to do some another work. Okay, so I stop here and I will record again for the simple loops using exit statement.